If you're seeing this, Sophia chose you. And I don't mean that as prophecy. Hear me, it's a metaphor, a sign, a little synchronicity to say your attention is aligning in a way that makes a life purpose message possible to hear. Not guaranteed, not magical, just possible. And that possibility changes how you move through the next hour, the next choice, the next conversation. In the next half hour, I want to help you notice one simple pattern beneath the chaos of modern life. Fragmentation versus coherence. I'll show you what fragmentation feels like in everyday decisions, how Sophia, as an archetypal name for undistorted perception, maps onto moments of clarity, and 3 practical practices you can try immediately to begin building coherence. I'll offer examples you can relate to. A child learning to walk, a person stuck in a secure but unsatisfying job, a tense conversation that leaves you confused afterward. I'll also give you quick scripts for small boundaries, guided noticing exercises you can use in real time, and simple questions to recalibrate when cohesion slips. If this lands with you, pause for 30 seconds and ask, have I been waiting for permission from somewhere outside myself? If you want more practical guidance on building that internal permission, consider subscribing now. Let's begin by naming the problem clearly. What fragmentation actually looks like. Think of your mind as a browser with too many tabs open. Some tabs are helpful, others are old tabs you forgot you opened months ago. Each tab runs a program, a learned framework, an internal voice with its own logic. You have a security tab that reads every risk as immediate danger. You have a performance tab that grades you on invisible metrics. You have a guilt tab that rewrites your choices as moral failures. Each of these programs feels real. Each contributes to the way you interpret a single incoming signal, an email, a comment, an invitation, a bodily sensation. Fragmentation is when those tabs all compete for processing power. The result? Decision paralysis, fatigue, chronic second-guessing, the habit of over-interpreting small events into long stories. You find yourself saying yes when you want to say no, or saying no when a small boundary could have preserved energy. You feel scattered. You carry an undercurrent of restless dissatisfaction as if something is draining your battery when nothing obvious happened. Here are a few everyday scenes that show fragmentation in action. Scene 1. A simple decision becomes an ordeal. You're offered a job that pays well but doesn't excite you. One inner voice says, safety, take it. Another says meaning, decline and follow your craft. A third warns you about future regret. You analyze the same data repeatedly, switch your preference back and forth, and sleep poorly because your attention is doing overtime. Scene 2. A conversation lands like a tiny bruise. Someone criticizes your work. Immediately your internal critic amplifies it. You're not good enough. Your security tab interprets it as social rejection and jumps to contingency plans. Hours later you're rehearsing responses, uncertain which part of you was actually affected, the part that wants growth or the part that's protecting itself from shame. Scene 3. Creative stalls feel like blankness. You sit to write, paint or build, and every attempt triggers an internal committee meeting. Is this good enough? Will people approve? Is this the right time? The creative action that should have been a small, curious experiment becomes a trial you must pass. This is fragmentation as an energy economy problem. Every competing program takes a bit of your attention currency. Over time, the cost is exhaustion. Now, coherence is not an absence of parts. It's their alignment. What I mean by Sophia, I'll use the name Sophia because it's a useful archetype. Historically and in many traditions, Sophia personifies wisdom, an image we can borrow. Here, Sophia names your mind's capacity for undistorted perception, the capacity to sense what's actually happening before the story gets layered on top. Sophia is not a deity in this context. She's not an external chooser who decides your fate. She's a shorthand for the internal quality that notices without immediate adjudication. the quiet, clear registering of facts that can then inform values and action. When I say Sophia chose you, translate that into psychological language. Something in your attention is opening. A threshold is being crossed where you're becoming more capable of hearing your own guidance. That threshold is quiet. It's not the fireworks of a dramatic awakening. It's the soft moment where you stop asking everyone's permission to trust what you perceive. What that threshold looks and feels like, there are specific markers that reliably show up as coherence emerges. You won't experience all of them at once, and they appear in different orders for different people, but the pattern is consistent. Decisions feel lighter, not necessarily easier in outcome, but less tangled in drama. You still weigh pros and cons, but the weighing doesn't feel like a tug of war. Silence becomes informative. Instead of panicking when you don't have an immediate answer, you notice that paused attention often reveals the right next step. Energy stabilizes. You feel less depleted by small social interactions and more able to channel energy into what matters. Boundaries hold more consistently. You say less and mean more. You stop over-explaining to prove yourself. Fewer imaginary tabs. You don't run counterfactual scenarios for hours after a decision. Your mind closes unneeded tabs earlier. The inner critic softens. Critique remains, but it's less alarmed and more practical. Curiosity returns. There's more room to explore without needing to perform. None of these are promissory notes. They are tendencies, not guarantees. Even when coherence is present, days will come when you revert to older patterns. That's normal. Coherence is a practice, not a perfect state. 3 practices to build coherence. I want to give you 3 core practices, simple, repeatable, and practical. Each one targets a specific part of the fragmentation problem. Practice 1. Notice interpretation versus perception. What it is, the ability to separate what you actually perceive from the story you tell about it. Why it matters. Most internal noise is interpretation masquerading as data. If you can create a gap between perception and interpretation, you make space for more accurate choices. How to do it? Start by labeling. Perception, the raw input, the words said, the image, the bodily sensation. Interpretation, the meaning you assign, the story that grows from the perception. Micro-exercise, guided. Right now, pick a small neutral stimulus, a notification, the shade of light on your wall, the taste of your coffee. Notice it and name it in 2 parts. Perception, the ping. Interpretation, someone must be upset. Or perception, coffee is bitter. Interpretation, I must be bad at making coffee. Say them aloud or in your head. Hold that pairing for 30 to 60 seconds. Don't argue with the interpretation, just notice the 2 different layers. Next time you catch a charged reaction, pause and ask, what is the perception here? What am I telling myself about it? Real-world example, the late-night email. You get an email from your manager. Can we talk tomorrow? Your story spins. I'm in trouble. Your perception was simply a line of text, time-stamped. By labeling perception and interpretation, you avoid escalating your response. You can respond calmly or wait until morning. The story will often resolve when more data arrives. Do's and don'ts. Do practice this with small stimuli first. It's easier to build skill on neutral events than on emotionally loaded ones. Don't use this to numb feelings. Noticing difference doesn't mean denying emotion. It means holding the emotion and separating it from the factual input. Do remind yourself, interpretations can be useful, but they're provisional hypotheses, not facts. Practice 2. Honor small boundaries without over-explaining. What it is, a set of micro-skills for saying no, for stepping back, and for protecting attention without turning every boundary into a negotiation. Why it matters. Each boundary you set is a tiny vote for what matters. Practicing small boundaries builds internal permission to protect larger projects and deeper values. Simple scripts to use right away. I can't take that on right now. I appreciate you, but I'm going to pass. I'll get back to you after I've had time to think. I need to step away from this conversation. Use the shortest phrase you can that still carries the boundary. Over-explaining invites negotiation and drains energy. Micro-practice, the 2-minute rehearsal. Picture a scenario where you usually over-explain. A friend asking for unpaid help, a colleague piling on extra work, a family member pressing you for a decision. Rehearse one of the short scripts aloud twice. Then notice, did your voice feel firmer the second time? That micro-practice helps create muscle memory. Real-world example, the secure but unfulfilling role. Imagine you're in a job that pays well but leaves you hollow. Instead of wide-sweeping declarations or dramatic exits, begin with protected time. Say, I've decided to carve 2 hours on Monday mornings for project work. I won't be available then. You're not burning bridges. You're preserving attention to test whether a different aim can grow without sabotaging your finances. Variations and pitfalls. Variation. If you want to be polite but firm, add a brief holding phrase. I can't right now, I'll be able to help next week. That acknowledges the request without creating extra questions. Pitfall. Over-justifying. When you feel responsible for softening someone's disappointment, you'll invent explanations that invite counteroffers. Keep it tight. Pitfall. Guilt as a metric. Feeling guilty doesn't mean the boundary is wrong. Guilt often means the boundary is needed. Practice 3. Let decisions rest. What it is, an approach to allow the subconscious processing time to do its work, rather than forcing an immediate verdict. Why it matters. Sometimes clarity arrives after digestion. Quick decisions are possible when you need them, but many important choices benefit from an incubation period. How to do it? Create structured rest for decisions. Decide on the decision's urgency. If it's urgent, decide urgently. For non-urgent, set a time frame. I'll revisit this Tuesday morning. Write it down. Do a 1-minute high-level note, the desired outcome, the constraints, and the deadline. Then close the file. Micro-exercise. The 24-hour rule. For big but not urgent choices, give yourself 24 hours. Make a factual list, no narratives, and set a calendar reminder to review. Use the intervening time to do other focused work. The background brain often resolves the tension. Real-world example, the creative project. You're deciding whether to pitch a concept. Rather than test every angle now, set a 3-day incubation. During those days, do small, unrelated tasks that keep your attention moving. Often, a simpler version of your idea will surface, one you can act on without bureaucratic overthinking. Do's and don'ts. Do set external constraints, a time or date, to keep the rest useful. Don't confuse rest with avoidance. Rest is active incubation. Avoidance is evasion without time-bound revisiting. Each of these practices builds the same muscle, separating input from story, protecting attention, and trusting that the mind does much of its best work outside conscious willpower, moving from practice to lived effects. Let me map what these practices look like when they accumulate. Imagine a week where you apply noticing boundaries and decision rest. The first small wins are often invisible. You respond to fewer triggers. You let one criticism land without multiplying it into a crisis. You accept a project and protect small chunks of time rather than trying to force big leaps. By the end of the week, you'll notice the quieter things. Less midday fatigue, fewer recurring anxious thoughts, the sense that your attention is concentrated rather than constantly redirected. This is what people describe when they say Sophia is choosing them, not an external bestowment, but an internal signal that your attention has shifted. Your life purpose message isn't a single sentence downloaded from heaven. It's a slow alignment of perception, value, and action where purpose becomes audible because you created the conditions for listening. Illustrative stories and longer vignettes. Vignette 1. The child learning to walk. Watch a toddler learning to walk. At first there's effort, hesitation, and falls. The child's internal parts are not debating meaning, they're experimenting. When the child does stand and step, there's no post hoc analysis. The movement was learned by trial, small boundary experiments, putting a toy at a distance, and resting between attempts. The child doesn't interpret failure as identity. The child notices perception, balance shifted, and adjusts. The point here is humility. Coherence resembles this humble, iterative practice. You don't need to fix everything at once. You need repetition, attentive trials, and room to wobble. Vignette 2. The secure but unfulfilling job. A person I'll call Maya took a job that checked many boxes: salary, benefits, stability. But after 3 years, she felt diminished. Her fragmentation showed up as a constant inner debate. The security voice kept reciting how rational the choice was. The calling voice quietly made art on weekends. For months she waited for a sign. Instead, she experimented. She set a Monday morning 2-hour boundary for her creative project. She practiced the boundary script with a friend. I can't take on additional freelance work right now. I need to protect this block. She let decisions about freelancing rest for 3 days before committing. Over time, Maya's energy concentrated. She could sustain creative work without immediately quitting her job. The coherence didn't erase the risk, it made the process manageable. Vignette 3. The critic in a conversation. You receive a blunt critique from a peer. The immediate interpretation is a moral failing. But you try the perception-interpretation split. Perception, words spoken; interpretation, I'm incompetent. You honor a small boundary. Thanks for the feedback. I need a moment to process. You let your decision rest. You don't respond defensively in the moment. You schedule a follow-up. In the follow-up, your questions are clarifying, not defensive. The critic's words were data, and you handled them with curiosity rather than collapse. That's coherence in action. Vignette 4. Creative block and incubation. A composer felt stuck. The more she tried to push, the less came. She instituted a ritual: 20 minutes of free play with no goal, then a 40-minute focused block on a different task, and then a walk. Over days, small motifs began to return. This is incubation, letting the background mind work. When she finally revisited her main piece, what came through had been refined by rest. Vignette 5. Family boundary. A family member expected you to attend an event you couldn't emotionally hold. Instead of over-explaining, you used a short phrase: I won't be there, but I'll call the next day. You did not rationalize your absence. You created a bridge instead of a battlefield. The relationship held. Your energy wasn't depleted. Recovery and maintenance. What to do when coherence slips. You will slip. That's the reality of practice. The important thing is to have simple recalibration moves when you catch yourself in fragmentation. 3 recalibration questions to use in real time. 1. What is the raw perception right now? 2. What story am I telling about it? 3. What small boundary or small pause would help me move forward? Use these as a triage. They're not therapeutic interventions, they are attentional resets. A short recalibration routine you can do anywhere. Breathe 3 times at normal pace. Label perception versus interpretation briefly, 1 sentence each. Decide on 1 micro-action, a boundary phrase, a calendar block, or a note to revisit later. If the emotional intensity is high, panic, despair, overwhelming shame, this routine is not a replacement for professional help. It's an attentional tool. If you're in crisis or facing persistent distress, reach out to appropriate support. Markers that coherence slipped and how to respond. You find yourself rerunning an imaginary conversation for hours. Response: set a timer for 1 minute to write facts only, then close the file. You accept obligations you don't want because you feel you must explain. Response: use one of the short boundary scripts and stop explaining. You feel heavy fatigue after social interactions. Response: schedule a 10-minute single-task recovery, a walk, a drink of water, 1 breathing cycle. The insistence on small here matters. Coherence is not about the heroic fix, it's about consistent minimal interventions that aggregate. Guided noticing exercise. 2 minutes to recalibrate. I'll take you through a short noticing exercise you can use when you feel scattered. Read this aloud or in your head and follow it. Close your eyes if that's safe. Bring into awareness a small sensation, the contact of your feet with the floor, the weight of your hands, the breath at the top of the inhale. Name the sensation. Perception. The breath is shallow. Now notice the first story that arises. Interpretation. I'm anxious about what's next. Say both aloud or inside your head. Allow the feeling without trying to push it away. Ask one clarifying question. What would be the smallest doable next step? Answer with one simple action. A glass of water, a 2-minute walk, a written note. Do that action now. That's it. Return when needed. Repeat that exercise whenever small fragments multiply. It trains the pathway from noticing to micro-action. Journaling prompts for deeper reflection. 2 to 3 prompts with space to write. If you want to journal for clarity, try these prompts. Take 5 to 10 minutes for each. Where do I feel my attention leaking? Name one recurring situation where I lose energy. When did I last make a choice that felt lighter than usual? What preceded that lightness? What small boundary could I try this week? Outline the exact words you'll use. Answer each with as much specificity as possible. Instead of, I need more time, write, I will block Monday and Thursday mornings, 8 to 10 for project work. Sophia as cultural background. A brief note. If the name Sophia resonates, it's because the archetype has a long cultural history as a personification of wisdom. You can borrow that language to make the internal experience feel less abstract. But remember, using the archetype is poetic shorthand. The work is psychological and practical. When I say Sophia chose you, think of the phrase as a recognition. Your attentional system is more ready to hear a life purpose message because you've cleared some of the clutter. Boundaries, scripts, and dialogue examples. Here are a few conversation-ready lines, short and to the point. Use them when you need to preserve energy without escalating conflict. I'm not available for that right now. I appreciate you, but I'm going to pass. I'll get back to you after I've had time to think. I need to leave this conversation. That doesn't work for me, and I won't be able to make it. Thanks for the offer. I'll let you know. Adapt these to your tone and context. Practice them aloud until they feel like normal phrases, not confrontational declarations. Warnings and limits. A few calibrations so this stays useful and grounded. Coherence does not guarantee that life will become easy or free of discomfort. It changes the way you manage discomfort. Coherence does not eliminate doubt. It helps you distinguish useful doubt from endless rumination. These practices are not therapeutic replacements for clinical care. If you experience persistent anxiety or depression, seek appropriate professional support. Don't expect immediate transformation. The threshold is often quiet and slow. Celebrate small signs, putting it into a weekly experiment. If you want a simple week-long experiment to test these ideas, try this structure. Day 1. Notice. Use the perception-interpretation pair on 3 small events. Day 2. Boundary. Practice one small boundary with the scripts above. Day 3. Rest. Choose one non-urgent decision and let it rest for 24 hours. Day 4, integrate. Combine practices on a single interaction. Day 5, reflect. Journal using the prompts. Day 6, repeat any practice that felt useful. Day 7, review. Note 3 changes. What felt lighter, what still drains you, what small next step you'll keep. This is an experiment, not a pledge. Approach it with curiosity. If some days are harder, that's data. Adjust. When coherence deepens, what life purpose messages look like. As coherence deepens, the idea of life purpose often shifts. It becomes less like a single, dramatic destiny and more like a set of recurring signals. The activities that consistently attract your energy, the questions that persist over years, the kinds of discomfort you're willing to endure because the work matters to you. A life purpose message beginning to come through might sound like this. A recurring thought. I'm happiest when I make things that help people see their own choices. A pattern of frustration. I keep feeling drained when I manage others and energized when I create. A small invitation that keeps appearing. Teach that class, write that piece, start that weekly conversation. The message likely arrives incrementally. Your job is to notice the pattern, protect attention for it, and allow small experiments. Closing reflection and tying back to the title. If you're seeing this, Sophia chose you as a poetic way to say your attention is in a place where a life purpose message can emerge with practice. The phrase is an invitation, not a verdict. It's a gentle recognition that something in you has begun to align. You don't need to have it all figured out right now. Start with the smallest doable actions. Notice perception versus interpretation. Honor small boundaries and let decisions rest. Those 3 practices, repeated, concentrate energy. They make the mind a clearer instrument for listening. Where are you on the spectrum right now? Fragmented? Sitting on the threshold? Practicing coherence? Drop one single word in the comments. Fragmented, threshold, or coherent. I'll read them. If this helped, subscribe for more practical explorations you can actually test in your life. The invitation here is modest. Try one of the practices today, notice what changes, and report back. Coherence doesn't promise spectacular revelations. It promises a better economy of attention, and from that economy, a clearer sense of direction emerges. Thank you for listening. Take one small step now. Notice one perception and its interpretation, and give yourself permission to act from the difference.